This is the Beesotted Pride of West London podcast. And we're back in the virtual joint again for, well, looks like it's going to be the last. Actually, it's not the last. I was hoping it's going to be the last podcast of lockdown, but we've got one more to go before we come out of lockdown. So listen, we're still celebrating here and we're enjoying ourselves because we actually won a game this week as well. My name is Billy Grant. Like I said to you, I'm sitting here in the virtual joint with my buddies as the alarm's gone off here. Because, you know, we ring the alarm when Brentford win a game. And as we say, I've got Laney in the house. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. It's been a mad few weeks for me. I've moved house. I've had a lot of big book deliveries. So the combination of all that means I've not been around. And so thank you, Bill, for managing it all without me. It's been, great to listen to it all while I've been running around with removals people. But I'm kind of almost settled now. No Wi-Fi, but that'll be sorted tomorrow, so I'm almost back in the game. But it's been a mental couple of weeks, so I'm looking forward to kind of chilling a little bit. And the Brentford win last night certainly sort of made my stress levels kind of ease away a little bit more.
It's amazing what a victory does, especially in these times of lockdown, because like I say, a lot of people are going through a lot of not brilliant times at the moment, and it's just amazing how much you realise how much football actually really does mean to people, and how much it can actually just make you feel good. All you need is a win, and it also makes you sort of kind of smile. We got the West Country Liberal Nick in the house. He decided that he needed to come on because he was very jealous that we got the other Liberal in the house last week, Liberal Tom. And he said, you can't be having that. You need to get me back in the place. So the Liberal Nick, we have opened the door to you.
Absolutely. There's only one Liberal, and the one and only original Liberal. I think I'll get a T-shirt made like that. Actually, it'd be really good, that. Yeah, no, great to be here, Bill. Can't wait to have a substantial meal with you and Laney and the others so that we could do a recording live of this podcast. But otherwise, I'm all well and good. Haven't had such a busy time as Dave, but have been enjoying the updated Griffin Park book that I got through a couple of weeks ago. Fantastic effort, Laney. Well done. And if anybody hasn't decided what they want for Christmas, if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't got the book, put it on your Christmas list because it's fantastic.
Oh, what a brilliant plug. Thank you very much, Nick. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And I have to say, while we are plugging the Brentford books that are out this Christmas, the Griffin Park final one, the black with metallic gold, it looks like it's going to run out. So if you haven't got one, get to the club shop or get onto legendspublishing.net and order that. And also we've had the Brentford Reimagined book, which was Brendan Nevin's beautiful recoloured book. So he's taken 200 old black and white photographs and just transform them by putting vibrant colour on them. So he works magic. So yeah, if you haven't got those and you don't know what to get for Christmas, you couldn't go further right.
Absolutely. So there we go. Look, I'll tell you something, talking about podcasts, we've kind of kept this one quiet because, to be quite honest with you, because of this whole lockdown business and the fact that, we were a little bit all over the place, we didn't think we wanted to make a big hoo-ha, but this is actually Beesotted's 700th podcast. We have done 700 podcasts, which is actually quite mad, and we thought, tell you something, let's have a bit of a party, but we thought, no, how can you have a party in lockdown? It becomes very difficult. So what we're going to do is we're just going to string it out a little bit, and we're going to go 750 for this big 750, which, fingers crossed, if we come out of lockdown a little bit or ease it up, we'll be having a few more post-match lockdowns as well, or post-match podcasts as well, which means that we should get to 750 before the end of the season, and we should have a right old knees up, because we're planning to have, tell you something, if things go right and things go the way that they think they're going to do, there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel at the moment now, and if things do go the way that we think they do, I think there's going to be all sorts of knees ups towards the end of the season, sort of in April and May and possibly June, because people have been locked in for so much. If we actually do get out, there'll be parties, there'll be get together, there'll be pub gatherings, there'll be podcasts, live podcasts, Christ knows what's going on. So I'm getting very excited myself, as you can hear.
Free vaccination with every listener to the podcast. How about that? Yeah, actually, that's a good way of doing it, isn't it? If you need to soothe your nerves, before you get your vaccine, listen to the podcast while the nurse injects you.
I never thought we'd get to 700. I mean, when we first started it, Bill, I mean, it doesn't seem that long ago, if I'm honest with you. I mean, it's quite a few years now. But if someone said, you're going to do 700 editions, and you'll be getting messages and people emailing us that just saying how much they enjoyed it. I mean, that's the reason we carry on, is people do enjoy it. There's people that don't enjoy it, and it's up to them. It's not forced, and but I think there are a lot of people that sort of look forward to Thursdays and the post match pods as well. So all the time we get good feedback, all the time we're enjoying it, all the time you're enjoying it, we'll carry on and doing it. So
when we started, of course, we couldn't have done this virtually, could we? I mean, we're that old now that we were almost having to arrive at the meeting venue by horse and cart. Yeah.
Well, actually, to be fair, when we first did it on a train on the way back from Middlesbrough. Like I said to you, it's a 10-minute podcast. We bought we downloaded the app, and you only had 10 minutes on it because it was like a trial version. And I remember there was about 8 of us, and we sort of all gave our view after getting smashed 4-0 by Middlesbrough. And like I said to you, if you Google it, Brentford, Middlesbrough, not 2014, I think it was, or 2015, 2014, you check it out. And from there, like I said to you, we uploaded it on the train from Middlesbrough, and then we lost Wi-Fi. And then when we got back to St Pancras, King's Cross, about 5 hours later, rather drunken as we were, and we looked on it and we saw how many listens it had, and we went, Jesus Christ, we better do a few more of these, and that's how it all started off, So it was quite one of those things that just happened completely out of the blue, and it's taken a spin off. And I think one of the things that we're hoping to do for the 750, if we want to actually take loads of different clips from the old school podcast, things that we've done, because if you look back at the different sort of things that we've done back in the day, the blind date that we did in Hammersmith that time when we actually gate crashed somebody's blind date as well. She was waiting for him for ages and he didn't turn up, and then when he turned up about 3/4 of an hour late, we didn't let him forget the fact that we knew he was on a blind date. That was hilarious, and we actually got them on the podcast and she was mortified. And like I said, the Rob Rowan podcast that we've done, and interviewing various CEOs and players, and there's all sorts of nonsense that we've done. The one to Ireland, I still love that one. The one when we went to Ireland, I really love that. When we went to Dundalk, that's definitely worth a listen if you want to listen back to to the B team special that we did, which was kind of evolved around sort of kind of mad people in Dundalk on a Wednesday night who decided that they were never going to shut their doors of the pub. They'll keep it open as long as we were inside the pub, which I thought was really quite interesting.
I really, really still enjoy Thomas Frank. I think that's probably one of the highlights of the podcast series that we've done. Also, I really do enjoy the kind of like the mixes up of the socials. Some of the interviews we did with some of the players, the ex-players, and when you listen back, because obviously you're so busy doing the events, you kind of just sometimes it washes over you like what they're saying. But some of the content was just incredible. So just lots of highlights and lots.
I'll tell you the other evolution that's gone on is the much more tactical discussion that we have nowadays. I feel like a bit fish out of water when I'm on with the Allard, because he knocks my view of football into a hat with his experience and knowledge and his ability to interpret stats and the way forward. But if you look back at the early ones, by gum, we used to talk a load of rubbish.
Speak for yourself, mate. To be honest,
that's right. We've been trying to tell you that for years, And just going back to what Laney has said there as well, talking about the live podcast, which I said to you, the live events, and that's something that we really do miss. I mean, they will be back 100%, but the one thing that we did do is that we were going to put up our Martin Allen live event in precursor to another event that we're doing, but obviously that was knocked out by the pandemic. But now listen, this event was about 2 years ago, or over 2 years ago, and the reason why we haven't put it up is that we just thought that technically it's going to be so libelous, or not libelous, but some of the things in it, we didn't know whether or not we can actually put that out. But since that, Martin Allen's done quite a few interviews since, and we think that we might be able to sort of kind of chop bits out and patch it together so that we can put it out there, because it should definitely be there. But it is hilarious what he put out there, which is all good. But listen, on this show, just want to quickly say thank you for your support again on Ko-fi, Beesotted.com/beer. We've had loads of people supporting us on Beesotted for that, all through lockdown, in at lockdown, out of lockdown. Really, really appreciate you. You know all your names, all the people out there, and we'll give you shouts from next week, because we need to get into this podcast because we have a lot to talk about. And on the show we'll be talking about talking about New Griffin Park. and the stadium, because we might be allowed into New Griffin Park, which would be very exciting as well. We're going to talk about the games we played this week against Wycombe, and also we played against Barnsley. We got Will Allsop, the Spreadsheet winker, and he's going to be giving some stats rundown of that as well. We got JB with his stats and facts. He's be talking about red cards. He's going to be talking about how we did not get recent teams. He's going to be talking about old games as he does, and also we got QPR fan Gobi Ranganathan, and he'll be telling us how he's a little bit nervous of the Bees coming down, or the Bees and them coming out to see us on Friday. But anyway, let's crack on, because we've got loads to talk about. Wycombe and Barnsley. Let's chat about that after this little pring. So we had 2 games that we played in a matter of a very few days as well. Wycombe Wanderers. We went up to Wycombe. First time we've been there for ages. I get to say, if you want to check out the podcast we did them as well, we had a long chat, with Phil from Wycombe, and I just got lost in chat with him, because he's a good bloke, he is, and we talked about the old days, about Brentford and Wycombe, and all sorts of nonsense that went on when we were back in the sort of kind of 3rd tier and the 4th tier, and it was a really, really good chat. I really got into that, and I just thought, great, that's teed us up nicely for a nice little victory at Wycombe. And how badly wrong did I get that? We absolutely struggled at Wycombe. It was one of those games where, to be quite honest with you, we thought the Borough game was bad, but the Wycombe game, God Christ, it was awful. And there was no other way to describe that game. We just seemed lost, we seemed unable, and Wycombe actually did a right good job on us, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They've done it twice this season, really. I mean, we played them in the League Cup, and they took us to penalties. So it's not as if we just struggled against them this time. They've kind of contained us twice. We were flat. We thought we'd come back from the international break perky, and we just weren't. We could have played for weeks, and nothing was going to change, and not even when Force came on, and it just wasn't happening. The plus side, if there is a plus side, we didn't really look like conceding, which is clutching at straws a little, I'd say, because those are the kind of matches we have to be winning. We do, and also we kept an unbeaten run going. But that I'm not a lover of unbeaten runs. I don't think necessarily a draw is much use to us. If you're drawing lots of games, we need to be winning. So it was just important that we kind of put a line underneath that when we went to Barnsley. But we are seeing that the games are coming around so ridiculously fast now. Saturday, Tuesday, Friday, and we are going to see rotation. We're going to have to get used to it a bit. There were calls for changes to be made. Thomas did make them for the Tuesday match. But going back to Wycombe in particular, because I know we're talking about that, very, very few plus points to be brought out of that at all. And really, if we can skip through the Wycombe game quite quickly, we probably get a better podcast. But yeah, disappointment, Bill.
Absolutely.
And yes, I do actually want to skip through the Wycombe game very much, because the Barnsley game was a different kettle of fish. The Liberal Nick, I mean, the fact is there was a difference between those 2 games, which probably came from a difference in personnel and also a difference in the way that we approached it, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We were so lethargic against Wycombe. We started off in sort of 1st gear and never got out of 1st gear. Against Barnsley, we started in 4th gear and rapidly went up to 6th. I mean, I don't know what the difference was, whether it be the international break, the travelling that the players had done, because that's what happens nowadays, is we send off players halfway around the world, never mind just halfway around Europe, to go and play in games during the international break. Obviously, little time before the Wycombe match for any preparation on style or any tweaks in formation changes that were to be made, and that was quite evident. On Saturday, it was dire. I've said all I want to say about it. Contrast that with last night, where out the traps we went like a rocket and met Barnsley head on, and actually should have won that game by more. We can get into discussions further about what it was. The one only positive I see from the Wycombe game is that the Force and Tony argument is going. Unless we rip up our entire playing system, which we don't want to do, those 2 can't play up top together in the 2.
I think we ought to give Wycombe just a little bit more credit than we have done as well. I mean, they are more resolute. I know they've taken a whipping early on in a couple of matches, but they've got a couple of wins now. They're making themselves a little bit more difficult to beat. They drew again last night, and it's they were set up to kind of to frustrate us a little bit. Yeah, we should have had enough quality there, but that's the kind of thing that we've been missing. It's just that spark of excellence, that Ben Rama bit of magic, the Canos bit of magic. Mbuemo, he's off the pace as well. I know that his assists have been incredible this season, but the last few games he's off it, and you saw his body language as he got subbed up at Barnsley. He's not happy with the way he's performing, and that's echoed throughout, on and off the pitch. I would have thought, but that's what we're going to get. We are sniffing around those playoff places, a couple of points away, and things aren't brilliant still. Things will improve, and that's why I'm not getting too aggy.
I'm going to call your mind to a couple of things. Before the match, Phil Catchpole, who's from the Ringing the Blues podcast, which is the Wycombe podcast. He said, look, if you're not up for a fight, you're going to be in for a bit of a struggle, because listen, we may not be the most skillful team in the world, but we like a good fight, and we'll bring the game to you. And I think that's one thing that they definitely did. And also my friend Adam from Cherry Red Records as well, who actually he decided to subscribe to this podcast because he liked it very much last week. So Adam, if you're listening, big thumbs up to you, mate. And you did say to me after the match, he said, we dragged you down to our level. And he wasn't putting themselves down, but he was just saying that we know what you are like, we know the kind of football we play, we tip our hat to it, but we actually brought you down to playing football like us, and you couldn't do what you were going to do. And I thought that was very interesting, and I think there's an indicator for us to show you that we can, and other teams like us, because I've heard other fans say the same thing, struggle against teams like Wycombe who do things like that, where they drag them down to their level, and we have to work our way out of how we can actually do or play the way that we normally do, and not get caught up in the battle and the fight and stuff like that.
Absolutely agree with that, totally. I mean, last night Barnsley were fairly, physical and trying to drag us down to their level, but we rose above it. That's the only concern that I ever have when we play these lower half of the division teams, is that we don't seem to have a way of actually beating them by changing the style of play. And it may be only a small way that we need to do it. It may only be a few tweaks that need to be made. But last season proved to us that was our stumbling block. And this season too, teams know that if they come at us and, stifle us and get us frustrated, they're more than likely going to come away with a result. If I was to plead one thing from the coaching team, I'd be really happy if I could just once or twice a season saw some really different tactics that actually meant that we were not playing these lower division teams at their own game, but taking our own game to them, and where we'd obviously wipe the floor with them. I mean, I understand what Dave's saying about Wycombe, but they were absolutely no shakes. They were there for the taking last Saturday, and I just hope we don't rue those drop 2 points, like we did last year.
So listen, let's get a little bit more of an insight on both the Wycombe and the Barnsley game. Let's go to Will, the spreadsheet winker. He's done a bit of an analysis, and he's actually going to give us the lowdown on what happened in the Wycombe and the Barnsley game.
Spreadsheet winker, and it does seem good, like it pretty well should. Spreadsheet winker, and he's always spelling his words.
Today we're going to give a rundown of the Wycombe and Barnsley games. First of all, Brentford versus Wycombe from Saturday. It finished 0-0. In terms of XG, Bees created 0.61 and Wycombe 0.42. Somehow this was even less of a thriller than the Borough game. Neither side registered an attempt over 10% XG the entire game, and it was characterised for me by Bees failing to get the ball moving through the thirds and through to the forwards. We know that Ivan only needs one good cross to get a goal, and these just weren't coming on Saturday. And worryingly, we didn't register any attempts at all from the 55th minute right through to injury time at the end of the second half. I think this was a consequence of bringing a midfielder off and essentially playing 4-2-2-2 with Force and Tony playing alongside each other. This tactical change stopped any ball progression through to the strikers and essentially stopped us from scoring completely. So hopefully that goes some way to answering the question as to whether or not Force and Tony can play in the same team together. Certainly not in that system, they can't. We had our second highest number of long balls this season at 81, suggesting the way we tried to deal with a lack of progressive passing from defence to midfield to attack was by lumping it long to the strikers or wingers. Wycombe dealt with this well, and consequently our pass accuracy was also at its second lowest all season. Looking at his passing maps, Matthias Jensen in the pivot position spent the majority of his time passing sideways, trying to switch play and create space around the Wanderers players, rather than passing progressively forward, which is what is needed to create high XG opportunities. And Ivan Toney played remarkably deep due to the lack of service to him. His average position was actually on the centre circle, when he should be pushing much higher up the pitch and receiving the ball there. And our full-backs were forced to play deep as well, giving us a lack of width up the pitch and lowering the opportunities to create overloads on the flanks alongside the wingers. Put bluntly, this was not the performance we needed after a week's break to freshen up. That instead came on Tuesday night, against Barnsley at a cold and windy Oakwell. In terms of XG, Bees had 2.01 and Barnsley had 0.13. This was a dominant defensive performance by the Bees, limiting the Tykes to just 0.13 XG, 0.09 of which came in the second half in their only attempt above 3%. And whilst there were a couple of hairy moments at the back forcing intelligent goalkeeping from Raya, including Britton's excellent cross which was parried by Raya and almost failed to Styles to poke home, our defenders did not give up a single big chance for the second game running. So, what about the attacking side of things? Well, there was the small matter of our first goal in over 5 hours of football, a brilliant glancing header from Ivan Toney on 66 minutes off one of what seemed like a million Jensen corners. It was actually 12, our highest of the season so far. It had just 0.05 XG, meaning only 5 in 100 similar headers go in on average. Ivan showed immense skill and a healthy slice of luck to lose his marker and flick it home from just outside the 6-yard box. Marcus forced a brilliant save from Walton in the first minute of injury time in the second half. This was a 50% chance in a fast counter-attacking move. So, what was the big difference from last match? For me, it was the 3 subs which changed our fortunes from the Wycombe game. Jensen was replaced in the pivot role by the stronger Janelt, allowing Matthias and Josh De Silva to push further up the pitch. Jensen played much higher than before, as did the fullbacks Rico and Henrik, which contributed to lots more overloads on the wings, especially with Fosu, Jensen and Henry on the left-hand side, where most of our attacking was done. There was also much more rotation between the front 3 with Fosu playing. He's much more able to come inside and make overlap passes than Canos has been this season, and there were a lot of short passes between himself and Rico Henry down the left wing. This is how you create space around defenders, and it was a key part of Ben Rama's game which we've been missing so far this season. Fosu also had 3 successful dribbles, proving that he's skilled at driving the ball forward and beating his man, much more than Canos is able to. And for contrast, against Wycombe, Canos did not attempt a single dribble. Janelt in the pivot was immense, providing 3 interceptions and not being dribbled once in the whole match. The defence also have much more confidence in him than Jensen, because the fullbacks feel more comfortable playing further up the pitch, and if they do get caught on the break, Janelt will cover them. This was a very dominant performance by the Bees, improving in attack and defence from the Wycombe game, and hopefully this same trend will continue against Shepherd's Bush on Friday night. Come on the Bees.
So there you have it. Will, Spreadsheet Winker, he gives us good information because you can sit down there and analyse, and yeah, a lot of the stuff that you know, but also a little bit of insight in there, and you know the difference between that Wycombe game and the Barnsley game for us. That Wycombe game, we just created nothing. We really didn't. Wycombe didn't create anything. We didn't create anything. You know, one of the plus sides, I think, as Laney said there, we kept a clean sheet, and that's one thing that you know that if you're going to be going up, you've got to try and keep clean sheets because then you can try and nick goals from that. So that's one good sign, and that's one thing as well. Since Fontes has come back, it looks like that maybe he's started to tighten us up a little bit at the back there as well. The Force and Tony argument as well, a big no-go. That was a big discussion on the week last week with the liberal Tom, the other liberal, I should call him the real liberal, and also the Allard as well. And so the Force and Tony, should it be, shouldn't be? There's a lot of the debate going on social media about that as well, where people are saying, look, you just got to stick them both in. They score goals, and I think that goes to prove you it doesn't really work like that. You know, you take one player, put a player in, you've got to take a player out, and you're not feeding these players. So that, and also Tony coming deep, the fullbacks not getting to the ball, not getting any width. You know, the long balls that we were playing, you know, which just wasn't happening. I mean, you know, it was all in there. You know, but as opposed to that Barnsley game, though, I'll tell you what was interesting about that Barnsley game. For that Barnsley game, for a lot of that game, it was actually quite tight. Barnsley were doing a little bit of a job on us. What they were doing is that they were kind of pressing us, or they were kind of holding us back. They were making sure that when we came forward, their fullbacks were always pouncing on our players. You know what I'm saying? So they were kind of not doing the full-on press like they normally do, but they were probably doing a sort of kind of regulated press, probably to make sure that they could actually last out the full 90 minutes, because trying to do a full-on press is actually really knackering. But I thought they were quite effective in doing that. And up until the time that we actually scored the goal, whenever that was, we hadn't actually created that many chances. You know, so it was actually really tight. I mean, Barnsley didn't create anything, hardly at all. I mean, as he said, 0.13 in the whole game, 0.99 in the second half. They created hardly anything. But as soon as we scored that goal, all of a sudden, they had to give way. We all of a sudden, confidence had flown back in. We were doing what we did, and then we actually started to create some really decent chances, didn't we?
Yeah, I thought we did pretty well throughout that game. We controlled the match. You're right about Barnsley. They're not an awful team. They gave us a game at Griffin Park towards the end of last season. So it was going to be always going to be a tough match, and it was all important just to get the points. And I think we were waiting for that spark. I mean, there was some frustrations. I thought Josh Da Silva, he had a shot that he should have done a million times better with. Waymo, again, he blazed one over. We had a couple of semi chances that I think we would have converted last year, and we were just waiting for either the right cross or the right finish. And luckily, we got that when Tony did brilliantly to get across the markers and get an angled header into the bottom corner. And after that, I honestly thought that was it. I couldn't see them getting back into it. We should have doubled the lead a little while afterwards. But I think let's call it a scrappy win, a well deserved but slightly scrappy win. And I think that's just all that matters. That's all that mattered. Just to take the pressure away. Just to get a bit more focus on looking up the division. Not that I was ever looking down, but it was. I think it just crystallises the fact that we're not a million miles away. And I think the changes in the team, it probably gives Thomas Frank just a little bit more of an idea of fine tuning. Janelt came in, played really, really well. I thought he was my man of the match. Tariq Fosu came in, rested Canos, and again, I've not enjoyed the hate that Canos has been receiving from certain quarters, and I think he came on and added some energy towards the end. I'd like the only slight criticism I would say, and it's not really a criticism, it's just like questioning whether he might not regret this, but I think maybe after Tony got his goal, just giving Force a little bit more time. Just give Tony a little bit more rest, because we're going to need them on Friday. I mean, I wouldn't be against Force starting on Friday. I don't think he will, but I think we should be able to flip those two a little bit more than we are. And it's a thought. It's going to be 72 hours since the previous match, and whether the recovery levels are there. I thought another massive plus. Rico, what a shift he put in again, and again Raya. I think what he brings to that team is just it's right there in front of us. His distribution. He did a couple of cat-like saves, or one in particular where he kind of came out and gathered, and one when he pushed one away. So on Dalsgaard, he looked back on his game. I thought we looked a better balanced team last night, certainly better than Wycombe. But then Barnsley allowed us to play. They allowed us to push onto them to a certain level, and then they wanted to defend, but they put a lot of fouls in as well. So a lot of plus points.
The Liberal, I'm just wondering, our first goal in 5 hours, I believe it was, at Barnsley. Were you a little bit worried that we were kind of, losing that kind of firepower that we were always meant to have?
No, because good strikers always score goals eventually and go on a run. And Tony has been on a run. He's missed a couple of games where he's been misfiring. Last night when he scored a goal, and actually you could see once he'd scored that goal as well, for the remaining time that he was on the pitch, he actually did he upped his shift work as well. From it looked through watching through the laptop screen. So I mean, no doubt about that. I mean, the beauty about Ivan Toney is, of course, is that he's one of those players. He had a lot of time off at the end of last season because of Peterborough's season ending early. So he probably is not as, he hasn't put in as many match hours as has some of our other players who played right through until July and the playoff system. So we've got that's one reason why I think Tony should definitely start on Friday without a shadow of a doubt. The rest of the team, I mean, Barnsley are impressive. They did live up on occasions a bit to the sort of northern industrial clogging team. They weren't afraid to make a few tackles and sort of knock a few people around a bit. But other than that, I actually was quite impressed by the way Barnsley played. I think they'll be all right this year. I don't think they'll be down the bottom. I don't think they'll be scrapping for relegation like they were last season because their pressing game was pretty impressive. They did the same to us in that fateful game last July, or back in July when we didn't clinch automatic promotion, and they did the same again last night. But this time I think we had a way around it. Zonal marking was their letdown because that's how Tony scored the goal. Their zonal marking system let themselves down badly, and that's why. But we could have had two, possibly three. I mean, to be fair, let's not ignore the penalty shout. I mean, it was a definite penalty for them. We would have been absolutely furious if that hadn't been given to us. But hey, that's football. Evens itself out over the course of the season, so not worried about that. But no, props to Barnsley.
Bill, do you think that was a red card? That foul on, it was Dalsgaard, wasn't it? That looked like a red from where I was.
I was quite surprised. I mean, I think the penalty is obviously that was a penalty. I've looked at it so many times and I thought, yes, that's a penalty, but referee didn't give it. But I also called that and I thought that was it's a definite. I thought that was a red card at the time as well, but the referee didn't give that. So it's one of those ones where it spins around. But just coming back to the match as well. I mean, just quickly, listen. Thomas Frank had to make some changes this time because there were things that just weren't working right for him. You've talked about the Canos scenario and Fosu, because we were asking the question, what was Fosu must be like in training? Because if he's not been given a game all this time, what's he like? I mean, I'm just wondering again if Fosu still maybe doesn't quite do the defensive thing, because I know, speaking to Thomas Frank Lowe's, he loves his players to be all-round players. So, at the time in Josh De Silva, at the time when I was asking whether or not he's going to play, this was like very early days of Thomas Frank's career, and he was like going, he still needs to build on his defensive game. He needs to build on his defensive game. And now he's up there, and he's obviously he expects a certain level, and it just wouldn't surprise me whether Fosu, he believes it's the same thing, where he feels that Fosu has to develop an all-round game before he'll actually put him in and make him a starter. And I think he's earned his stripes in that last game because he definitely gave us the energy. He definitely is doing a lot of things that we expect him to do. So I think that was good. Jano, obviously, as Laney said, was fantastic, and what a great stand-in for Norgard we've got here. He's a reliable player, and he's all over the place, which is all good. And but I'm just wondering whether or not you think that Thomas Frank may have waited a little bit long to make these changes.
Well, yeah, possibly. I mean, but it's always a big ask for Canos to go and play on his less familiar and less comfortable side, and obviously to stand in and or replace Syed Benrahma. I always thought that was a big ask, and I've just documented a lot. I've said it a lot, about how he is still recovering from a very, very serious knee operation. I know he's fit, but that is going to also knock your confidence. He might be a yard slower. We might be finding out this about him, but he doesn't lack passion and he doesn't lack effort, and that's why the horrible things that some people are saying about him and to him and directly to him on Twitter are just so out of order. How can you be a fan and say those kind of things to your own players? I think it was unacceptable.
If that's the way, if that's the way that players abuse our players, I wouldn't call them fans of our club.
Well, it's just you have to. I think we're all struggling that the intensity of the matches when they come around. I think we all need the release, the Brentford fix, and if we're not winning, it is kind of a bit frustrating. But can I put things in perspective?
Listen, in the end, we got 4 points. Good games there as well, and it bodes well for the weekend about QPR. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But listen, we need some more stats. We need some more facts. We got JB. And he's got a few more stats and facts with us, always accompanied by a little bit of funk. The Liberal loves a bit of funk, don't you, Liberal?
Oh, funk me.
No, thanks. We shall move on.
Are you ready for this? I told you it was coming. Who? JB. And he's ready to sock it to you one time. Get it.
Hello, Jonathan Burchill here again. Just rounding off the international break, as you mentioned last week, the match between Wales and Finland did see XB Chris Mepham come up against Marcus Forss, if only for the final few minutes. It was the first winner of the B Team Player of the Season in 2017 against the winner in the following season. Amazing, it was only 3 years ago they were both lining up for our B Team. Back to last Saturday, and we shouldn't have been surprised by failing to score at Wycombe. In 8 of our last 11 visits, we haven't registered a goal. One stat glad didn't get added to at Wycombe was our record of red cards. Of the current championship sides, they are the opponents we have had the most sendings off against. 6 players have taken an early bath in these games: Joe Allen, Richard Kennedy, Mark Peters, Sammy Moore, Ben Stagosta and James Wilson. This week 131 years ago in 1889, the very first Brentford side took to the field by Clifton House for the club's first ever match. The teams changed into their kit at the nearby Griffin Pub and had their game against Kew finish 1-1. However, as the visitors had turned up half an hour late, kick-off was delayed until 3:30, meaning the match finished in semi-darkness.
So that was JB. A few more stats, a few more facts, a few more red cards. We didn't get the red card, actually. We weren't going to get a red card at Wycombe. You didn't think so, did you? No.
Nah.
No, not at all. No, not at all. But listen, things are shaping up quite nicely, like I said to you, as we go to the QPR game this week. He says that, as before the Barnsley game, a lot of people were saying, I'm not quite sure about this QPR game. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, because what we now need to talk about, the stadium, New Griffin Park, and the fact that, due to the relaxing of the government regulations, they have said that they're going to be allowing fans in stadia as from the 2nd of December, which is very exciting. So 4,000 fans will be allowed in Tier 1 areas, 2,000 fans will be allowed in Tier 2 areas, and there'll be no fans at all allowed in Tier 3 areas. The question is, which tier will Brentford FC be come December? I mean, as it goes, people think that we might be in Tier 2, but then you never know. We might be moved up to Tier 3, which means we can't see any games at all. And very, very unlikely we might be in Tier 1. But yeah, and we also don't know how these tiers might fluctuate, because maybe after a month or so, if you're doing very well, you might go up, down, up a division, or down a division. You might get relegated or promoted, up a tier or down a tier. So the question that we've been asking, and I'm sure a lot of you fans have been asking as well, is what is the fairest way for fans to be allowed back in Griffin Park, or New Griffin Park, as we call it, because it looks like we're going to be allowed there in very near future. So what is the fairest way of letting fans back? I'm not going to just throw it open to you, because also we've asked you guys out there and we've got your feedback as well. Laney.
Well, my first thought really was to go with the taps. That was kind of what Brentford had already had, a system that was set up to be able to reward or prioritise the loyalty of fans over a period of time. So for that. For it to be used when we actually probably need it for the first time ever seemed the most sensible way of doing it. Now, a lot of people have said on our WhatsApp group that the tap system was really, really set up for prioritising away allocations rather than the home ones, but I just think that with manpower at really at a premium at the moment, and the need to get it right, I don't see anything wrong with with making those that have been to the most games over the last 5, 6, 7 years, including their continue. We get a lot of tap points for buying a season ticket every season. It encapsulates all the things that need to be rewarding. Now, I am an England fan member. You know a lot about this. Well, I was an England fan member. You know more about this, Bill, and I'm sure you'll explain how that's set up in a minute. But they've got a system where it's partially down to loyalty and your attendance record, and there's also some goes out to more random into a ballot. Now, I do think younger, more recent fans need to be getting into games too. They're the future. It's just okay looking over your shoulder and looking at the oldies and the people that have been going forever on a day. They're not the only Brentford fans, and we do need to strike a right balance. But until the end of this season, I think we should have loaded it very heavily to those that have bought season tickets for the past 5, 6 seasons and those with the most tap points. That's my personal opinion.
Liberal.
My heart sank actually when I heard the news, whenever it was, that fans would be let back in, because I think this is just so riven with difficulties that I really don't know what the answer is. I'm not entirely certain I want to go to a game where I'm not certain that my mates, there's no guarantee that you, Dave, or I would be attending the same game. Let alone other members of our crew would be there. So I'm not certain I'd want to be attending a game where I didn't have all my mates in attendance able to moan with. And then how are you going to decide, as Dave said, who gets in? Football's all about money nowadays. Let's not beat about the bush. And there is not a cat's chance in hell that some of the people who have spent a large sum of money, let it be said, on purchasing the executive boxes and the executive premium seats at Lionel Road will not be expecting, New Griffin Park, will not be expecting to get in when the season resumes. And I think, we've just got to accept that they'll be in. Then, you've got some of the younger element who goes to the games, but lots of people have got into the Brentford habit by going as a family. Sons have gone with their fathers, sons have gone with their mothers, daughters have gone with their fathers, and those are the type of supporters that we've really got to look after as well, because they are the future. You need the wisdom of Solomon to solve this problem. I do see the thing that taps, ticket allocation points are there for a reason. And therefore, I think you've got to allow at least 75% of the 2,000 people. And 2,000 people in what, an 18,000 seater stadium? We're all going to be rattling around in there, aren't we? It is a difficult one to solve. I think 75% should go on ticket allocation points. 15% should be allocated to the premium ticket holders, because I think we've got to recognise that they have put their money up front and a lot of it, and then that leaves a little bit for the rest. There are other issues as well. For instance, somebody pointed out to me the other day that the stewarding might be an issue. Lots of people who do steward, you need to be registered, you need to be licensed as a steward nowadays. If you haven't got that license, that license needs renewing once a year. Lots of the stewards haven't had any work since March to do, whether it be, and people who are licensed, they'll steward a Brentford game, they might go to Rangers, they might do a Wembley, they might be bouncers at a nightclub, what have you. A lot of them have had no work since March, and can't afford or haven't chosen to renew their licence. So there'll be a lot of clubs in London scrabbling around to get hold of stewards, etc. Transport arrangements, will you be expecting people to arrive on foot, trains, buses? There are limitations on all this. Really difficult way to work out. But I put a lot of negatives there, and as I said to you when I started this tirade, when I saw it, I thought, oh God, how are we going to solve this problem out? I thought to myself, do I really want to go through the whole hassle And part of me thought no, but I tell you what, if I get a chance to be at New Griffin Park for a game, I'll be there like a shot.
Listen, there's been a statement from John Varney, pretty much as we've been recording this podcast as well. As people may know, if you're season ticket holders, they've sent out a survey to you. So you'd check your email, check your junk mail if it's not there as well, for anyone to basically give their feedback as to how big their group will be and if they're interested in actually taking up the offer of going to a game. Because there are some people that are saying, actually, I'm not interested. I'm not going to go until there's fans allowed in the whole stadium. I don't want to go there when there's 2,000 fans. So they're getting a gauge from that. So definitely fill that in. You've got until the 29th of November to fill that in. As he says, the club are currently working through the information, and when they've got more information on the tier, what the tiers will be, which is on Thursday, then they'll be able to sort of work out have inside the stadium who includes and expected soon. Now this is interesting. The total in the stadium will include a small allocation of seats for supporters that purchased premium seating or premium season ticket holders in the dugout bar area. Those supporters will be contacted separately by email in the coming days. Whatever number we are working to, we will ensure that each ticket group will have a fair split of the overall allocation. And then he talks about other stuff about, hopefully we'll get in the stadium, this is a good sign, everything like that. Now, to me, that was a very interesting little kind of point that he's thrown in there. Listen, I've got no problem, everyone's got no problem about people coming to games at Brentford. But this was a question that has been thrown about as to people were asking whether or not, if you pay money in the priority areas, will you get priority over people who had been there for a longer period of time? And I think that this indicates that that is the case. What they're saying in effect is that if you've bought a premium seat, you won't be, even if there was a tap system, you won't be under the regular tap system. You'll be under the kind of, you've bought a premium seat system, so you will also get in underneath that system as well, which some people might say that's fair, some people might say that's not fair. Laney's given his thoughts on what he thinks is right, what he thinks isn't wrong. So as the Liberal, I just want to make a couple of points myself. Listen, I understand it's a complete and utter nightmare. First of all, this pandemic situation has thrown everything up in the air. B, of course, we know that the club, everybody will love to get as many people in the stadium as possible. So this is a very, very difficult situation. What I will also say is that, we do have something that was put in place, whether or not people agree with it or not. But it was put in place, after the Southampton game, basically because we had a cup game, and they allowed anybody to just turn up at the ticket office and buy tickets, and literally Tom, Dick and Harry just turned up buying 10, 15 tickets, and they sold out in a couple of hours. And so that meant a lot of people, including people like myself, you and Laney, we struggled to get tickets for that Southampton game. We know a lot of people that didn't get tickets and end up going to the home end and get kicked out, and all sorts of grief was going on. So that was put into place for a particular reason. Now, whether or not you think it's right or wrong, that's not the issue. And we've gone through various cup games with it, where they've used taps for cup games, used taps to allocate tickets for away games, which the allocation may be less, like the Fulham away game, for example. So this has been used for a particular reason. I have a theory to say that, if you're a Brentford fan and you've been going for a while, you've been going to games, to be quite honest with you, you can get hold of a ticket. So Chelsea away, everyone was really nervous that they couldn't get tickets, but anyone could get a ticket for Chelsea away. Fulham away, even though it was down to season ticket holders, it went down to sort of quite a low number of the tap points before actually kind of season. I think it went down to like the third day of sale, and people still got hold of tickets then. So I believe that if you want to get hold of tickets, you can do. So the value of the taps. I mean, I've got a lot of taps. I've got, I don't know, thousands, 4,000 plus, I don't know, like ridiculous, like a load of taps, and I never even look at it because you just know, I've been to my games up and down the country. I don't go to the games to accumulate taps. I just go because I enjoy going to the games, and it's become a side issue. And to be quite honest with you, for most of these games, Chelsea, wherever it may be, it's never really been an issue. It's never been in the back of my head. But all of a sudden, you've got one situation where you think, actually, these taps that have been there, which really haven't had a great value, has actually got a value to it, and there's a danger that all of a sudden they're being the value of that is being changed, and for me, I've got a bit of an issue with that. Not necessarily for myself, but just for everybody, because you sort of think, what is the point? Why do people go to these games? If you've been told that you've been getting something and this is what you're thinking of in your head, it is a little bit unfair to sort of change it at the very last minute because you think that, oh, well, we need to sort some other people out. I just think that's a little bit wrong. I think if you're going to change anything, you have to do it up front. You need to let people know. And also the other thing is that if people have accumulated taps, at the end of the day, they've done it through loyalty for the club. They've been going to watch the club when the club probably wasn't very good, but they've still been there. And if you're going to be, if you start turning around saying, actually, those haven't got any value anymore, what are you giving back as a repayment for those fans to say, tell you something, we really appreciate what you've done. We really appreciate you went up and down the country when, to be quite honest, it wasn't cool to be a Brentford fan. Yes, we're going to take those away now, but what we're going to do in return, this is what we're going to give back to you for your loyalty. But that doesn't seem to have been done. I'm not saying because nothing's been said as yet, and I think that these are the conversations that need to be had at this moment in time. Laney?
I think what you just said is right when you said, like, you collected them, not to collect them necessarily, but you accumulated them because you've been going to lots of games. The way I looked at the tap system was almost like a safety blanket. I mean, I thought, I always knew that if there was a game or if there was a situation where I really, really needed to call upon my loyalty, I'd be all right because I had loads of them. It's almost like I bought my AA or RAC membership, not because I thought I was going to break down every week, but whenever I did break down, I'd be all right. They'd come and bail me out. But it's like saying when you actually, your car is beginning to splutter, they're going to go, well, we're not going to come out and we won't sort you out now. It's kind of like that safety blanket's been taken away. Now I should get in. I feel I should get in. With 40 years, there'd be some people saying I've been there 75 years, but I've had a season ticket for a long time now, and I've been going to pretty much most games home and away for the last 10 years probably. For me not to be in that game, for me not to be in that 4,000, I would say is a bit perverse, if I'm honest with you. But I'm happy to miss out if I think the system is fair. Now we'll see. The proof is now in the pudding. A lot of pressure now on the club to get it right, Bill.
Two things. One of which is we're not talking about 4,000. We're talking about 2,000. Which really highlights the problem. We'll be in Tier 2 with 2,000. London will be in Tier 2, which allows 2,000 people in. There's no way.
Yeah, it's still the same issue. Doesn't matter.
Well, yeah. No, but I mean,
if it goes down to
2,004. I mean, 2,000 sounds almost a nothing figure compared with 4,000. I mean, we all.
But it will go to 4,000.
Well, I'm not saying how quickly
when the tier system changes.
And we all know what a crowd of 4,000 looks like because we've been there. We've been in crowds of 4,000. We've very, very rarely been in crowds of 2,000 and know what that looks like. I mean, the only bright side I can see, possibly for the first few games that were readmitted before, is that actually there will be a possibly quite sizable proportion of season ticket holders, etc., who don't want to go to the game for health reasons because they'll be shielding, they don't want to put loved ones at risk, etc. So that may help the club out of an issue. But I agree with everything that you and Bill have been saying, Dave, so don't get me wrong on that score. But what I would say is that also to the club, you signed a charter. When the Holster tap system came up, you signed a charter that said this is how we will allocate tickets in future for games when we've got limited capacity. If you're going to rip up that charter, you've got to approach that with great care and you've got to explain to fans exactly why you were doing that. And I have to say that bit of communication, Bill, that you read out just asks so many more questions than it answers, that the club have got to get the comms right on this. And unfortunately, their record on comms, we have been brilliant on field in recent seasons. Off field, we have been less good. And it worries me is that we're just going to absolutely create a whole storm, S-storm, because of this as we go on. And, we will lose. And the club will lose loyalty, it will lose supporters if it doesn't handle this the right way.
Okay, so Laney, I mean, I know you sort of said taps, but can you think of any ways which you think would be fair to allocate these tickets?
I think what Nick said, I can't argue with the numbers there. I mean, I know we're kind of plucking numbers out of the sky a little bit, but 75% to go to the loyalist of supporters over a period of time, which is the tap system. Can't magic another system up. And then I agree that we do have to look after the corporates and those people that have bought executive premium tickets. There's a lot of them are absolutely normal fans like you or I, and that they've just decided to spend a lot of money on a new Griffin Park experience in their first season. They may not do it for the second or third or whatever, but for this first season there, they wanted the best possible experience, and they decided they wanted comfy seats and beers and pies and all that kind of gubbins chucked into it. We decided not to do that, but it's their choice, and it doesn't make them less of a fan, and I don't think it makes them more of a fan, but it's just that's what they decided.
Okay, I mean, and I'll be sort of devil's advocate here as well. You can still be in comfy seats, but still be part of the tap system, and still be, if you're saying that Brentford fans have been there for a while, they'll also be part of the tap system as well. Let me just come back to this as well, because listen, again, it's about diversity. It's about sort of trying to get as many fans in as possible. Obviously, you can't get everybody in for every single game. If we were going to Man United away and we only got 2,000 tickets, they're going to have to find a way of allocating those 2,000 tickets. And I think this is kind of quite similar. Like I said to you, I mean, I've been a member of the England fans since literally from day one, from the early 90s when England fans started off. And what happens with the England fans, they started a system which is like what we do with the taps. It's called the cap system, where every game that you go to, in every home game, you get a certain amount of caps. And when you go to away games, you get a certain amount of caps. Interestingly, actually, for England, you actually got more caps for home games than you did for away games, because what they decided to do is that they decided to try and reward people for going to home games, trying to fill Wembley Stadium and pay for Wembley Stadium, and the away games, but you still got caps for away games. So what you found is that when you got to tournaments and tickets were allocated in this situation on a cap system basis, if you got tickets, like say for example myself, I was a high capper, so I'd get tickets all the way through to the final because I'd got a large amount of caps, whereas some of my friends would maybe get a ticket for a couple of the group games and maybe one of the knockout games, and that worked out because they were going down to see how many loyalty points you got, and then they'll cut off depending on how many people applied for each game, which is kind of similar to what happened at Brentford. After a while, England decided that they need to get more diversity within the whole fan base, and in that way it meant that if young people had decided to join England fans but they couldn't get any tickets because the people that had been going for years were constantly going to games and building up their caps, and the younger people couldn't actually overcome them, they said what we'll do is we'll go 70% of people will go on a loyalty basis, and the other 30% we'll put them into a ballot, so somebody who's got no caps at all can still, if he wants to go to a game, or she can go into a ballot system, and that person may get a ticket for a game. The interesting thing is that all the England fans actually thought that was really fair, because they thought, listen, I'm getting my loyalty, but also you're giving the opportunity to somebody to come through the ranks and build up their caps and also get a ticket for the game. Now, this type of situation I think would be very fair if Brentford introduced it. I don't think they should introduce it now because it's something that you should have looked at 6 months ago and put it into place. But things like that, I think, are things which actually make people feel a little bit more comfortable, because it's a balance up between the loyalty and also giving people in other areas the opportunity to get into games like or what's happening now, or get into big away games, big cup games. Laney,
I do have to say, and then I'm not pointing a finger and saying expecting too much, but I think there was always a good chance of this happening. It was always going to be a phased return to football. It was never going to be straight back to capacity. So the club, I would have thought, have actually probably already thought about how they're going to do this. I'm not saying they're going to ignore the survey. I'm not saying they're not going to listen to what the input is and maybe take up ideas they've not been able to come up with themselves. But for the last 6 months, it's been pretty obvious that there would be a gradual return to increasing the capacity or the attendances until we get to a stage where the vaccine allows for us to actually have full stadiums again. I think they probably have had already lots of meetings and probably have some sort of protocol how they're going to do this. This doesn't come as a surprise. When Boris mentioned this a couple of days ago, they weren't going, "Oh blimey, we need to react soon." I'm almost certain have it in their mind how they're going to do this.
I hope that they've spoken to or will speak to Bees United and Bias, the Brentford Independent Association.
No, they're talking. They're talking to them. So there are conversations that are being had.
Excellent.
So like I said to you, listen, this is all good. Listen, these conversations need to be had. Our thoughts need to be aired. But we're not. This is not just our thoughts; these are other people's thoughts as well. And like I said to you, we're gonna, you guys there as well. We've got a number of comments from fans. Some of them tongue in cheek, but some of them quite serious as to how they think it's going to be fair to allocate these tickets. And I mean, I'll go through them. Wilfred Diego, he says, anyone who's wished harm to any Brentford FC player or staff, get to the back of the queue. That seems fair to me. So I mean, I think that's a little bit of a. Little bit of a side swipe at the Canos. There's a difference between detracting and actually being pretty nasty and pretty violent and horrible towards somebody. So that was an interesting one as well. Harrison Korotki said season ticket holders and people with the most loyalty points have to be first in line for the seats, and he got sort of quite adamant about that as well. You guys, have you got any thoughts? Anybody's thoughts on there as well, which you thought was quite interesting?
I just think I think the sort of selection really shows how many different people have got different opinions, and all of them are valid. There is no perfect situation to what is an absolutely awful situation. 2,000 people into a stadium, then hopefully as the tier system changes and we the amount of people in the area is contagion rate reduces, then 4,000, and then probably 8,010. That's the way it's going to go. But it's important the club get it right, and they need to be clear in the decisions. It's a thankless task, but I think loyalty must be central to this.
DeLorean Gray, actually, and I think Liberal Nick would like this, actually. He said, if you're old enough to remember when 4,000 home fans was optimistic, you get first dibs.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go, DeLorean Gray. Well, but I mean, if you look through as well, Stephen Tiller says, I'm hoping Tier 1. Sorry, Stephen, that you're going to get that hope. Or possibly I might get a ticket for Exeter. They might be in Tier 1. But maybe allocate tickets half and half, so to season ticket holders and half to general admission, which would mean more people in our stadium. That goes with the ballot idea as well. And, and I think, Steve Beer says a fairest way is season ticket holders by rotation, with any tickets not taken up made available for members to buy. But you look through the responses to what we put out on the Twitter, it's absolutely divided, as I think we are as well. So I mean, the important thing is, and Rich Kerr says something like 75-80% to season ticket holders on a rotation, and maybe run a type of raffle where fans with previous booking history can win a ticket. Charge £10, and if you don't win, you get an iFollow code to watch it instead. So that can include season ticket holders who don't have a ticket that week too. I mean, there is lots of people with sensible suggestions here. I encourage anybody at the club to have a look through the Beesotted Twitter feed to see what people are saying, because that gives a lot of people here are making some interesting suggestions, and certainly ones that ought to be thrown into the pot.
I mean, I think Tebissimo's idea is probably one of the best ones. He says, I say let's just have a massive penalty shootout on the pitch, yeah?
My footballing skills means I won't see you to the year 2050.
That's right, 4,000 person penalty shootout. We'll probably be there till sort of kind of a 2024 for that one. But listen, lots of discussion, very interesting. To be fair, they're going to have to sort out things pretty quickly. Lots of discussion about this. We'll find out pretty soon, because like I said, the first game is on the 5th of December, and if the thumbs go up, we get a big thumbs up from Boris on Thursday, we could be kind of really kind of putting the motors in to actually get some fans in for that first game on the 5th of December at home to Blackburn. Then after that, like I said, we've got a few other games as well, which are going to be coming thick and fast after that. We've got the Derby game on the following Wednesday on the 9th, the Reading game on Saturday the 19th. The interesting one is Newcastle in the Cup on Tuesday the 22nd, which is a game that I think a lot of people would like to go to. It's a quarter-final of a cup. It's a night game underneath the floodlights, and it's actually going to, it's going to mean something. Not saying the other ones don't. And then we got Muff on the 29th of December, just after Christmas as well, in the holiday period. So listen, it's not too long to sort these things out. So it's going to be an interesting few days for the fans and for Brentford FC. But tell you something, it's going to be interesting few days as we get ready for our West London rivals coming down to Griffin Park. They don't like coming down to us because we normally do them good and proper, but nothing's set in stone because things are all gone a little bit awash amiss this season, and you just never know. Listen, we're going to come back after this little poing and we're going to talk about QPR. So, big West London derby is on the way. QPR coming down to Griffin Park Friday night. I need to find out a little bit of information on QPR. So I'm going to chat to my chum, my buddy, Gobi Ranganathan, QPR fan. He's going to let us know exactly what's going down in W12. Gobi, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, nice to chat to you, man. Listen, you seem a little bit mellow. What's going on?
I'm worried. It's a West London derby. Recent results over the years haven't been great. I'm worried.
Yeah, listen, maybe there's no right need to be worried at the moment now, man. But listen, just in general, I'm just wondering, how's life been for you? Obviously, since the last time we chatted, since the last time we played, there's been all sorts of lockdown business. Like, you don't live in West London, you live just outside of London, in the Stevenage zone as well. And how has this whole thing affected you, Gobi?
Yeah, it's been difficult, to be honest. As a situation, it's not something I'm used to. We're quite social creatures when we go to football, and me personally, I'm a social person, so I love going out, travelling around, going to footy and meeting people, and not being able to do that, it's a bit of a killer, to be honest. And watching footy on the box, it's all right, but it's just not the same.
No, it's not the same as well, and I have to say as well, you are an England para badminton star. I'm not being funny, but you fly all over the world, in and around your QPR games. You play badminton, in different countries around the world as well. And that's just come to a halt. How are you coping with that?
It's been a nightmare. It's turned my world upside down, in all honesty. Some people who aren't particularly as active or social as I am wouldn't necessarily notice the change as much, but for me, like I say, I'm jet setting all over the place. I'm travelling up and down the country watching Rangers. I'm active. I'm proper active, out and about all the time. And from literally doing all that to pretty much being at home, it's a killer. Mentally and physically, it's a killer. So it's not ideal. So I can't wait to get back to some sort of normality.
And as for QPR, Warburton, he's been at the helm now for 18 months. I know we've had quite a lot of conversations about Warburton, especially when he first came in, and you were really expecting quite a lot. You were expecting some attacking football. You wanted to sort of change the sort of kind of demise that QPR are in. 18 months down the line, are you happy with him?
Overall, I'm pretty happy. The style of football we've had, especially just before lockdown. We were playing some fantastic football, and we were free scoring. Defensively still a bit frail, but ultimately we were playing some great football. It was really easy on the eye, really exciting to watch. And then I suppose post lockdown, it's not necessarily been the same, but we've had quite a lot of personnel changes. We've lost a lot of goals in the team. We've lost Eze, we've lost Naki Wells, we lost him in the January transfer window. We've lost a lot of goals in the team. Eze's gone. We've lost Naki Wells. And then Jordan Hugo we had on loan as well. So that's a lot of goals to replace. But I'm happy with the signings we've made. It's just not quite clicking properly in front of goal yet. But we're still playing some nice football. We're having a lot of possession. It's just that final third. It's just not quite happening for us since the lockdown was lifted. And end of last season, start of this season, we've just not really performed as well as we could do, I think. But I'm still happy overall because the side that he is putting together, despite the personnel that we've lost, it still looks decent. You know, we're still frail in defence, but yeah, I'm happy enough, to be honest.
And I was going to ask you about that. I mean, obviously, defensively, you know, you've got Barbe in defence as well. He's an ex-Brentford player. I mean, I really like Barbe. He's such a lovely bloke. But to be fair, he's got a fair few mistakes in him. He does love to give away a penalty. I mean, how has he been for you?
Amongst the fans, he's a bit Marmite, to be honest. You got myself like you. I really like him. I think, you know, he comes in with some amazing tackles when you don't expect him to. But then there is a mistake or two in him pretty much every game, and it's just whether it's going to cost you a penalty or not. I mean, we've actually, between him and Rob Dickey, we've conceded quite a few penalties in the last few games, and you know, it's just a bit frustrating, especially when, you know, we're playing so well up front, or looking good, you know, possession wise, and having a nice lot of play, and then a silly mistake at the back from Barbe or Dickey is costing us, you know. And we can't keep doing that, and that is the worry. But personally, like Barbe, yeah, I quite like him. Like I say, it's just that one mistake, and whether it'll cost you or not.
And I mean, QPR traditionally have been very shaky defensively in the past few years. I mean, we'd say that's a bit of a trait of Warburton. You know, wherever he's been, he kind of seems to concentrate on attack, and the defence side of things. Even when he was at Brentford, probably didn't take the highest priority. It's been a problem for you for a few years now, and you saying in effect that you haven't really fixed that, and is that probably why your nerves are coming for the game on Friday?
I'm a little bit nervous about Friday, purely because I don't know what it is. Whenever we play Brentford, we just seem to not show up. I mean, I don't know what it is, whether it's just because we're on Sky, or whether we just, or actually even when we're not on Sky, we get to Griffin Park and we just don't seem to turn up, and then we get turned over. You know, I think we've been turned over quite comfortably over the last few years. But yeah, in the main, it's not necessarily that game that makes me nervous. It's just there's times we look really solid, and then other times when it just doesn't gel on the pitch, we just look a bit suspect. But then that goes all over the park. You know, you can't just point the finger at the defence, because actually, if the midfield aren't holding it up properly, then you're putting more pressure on the defence anyway. So I think that what I'm trying to say is ultimately, when we play really well, we look good. We look good going forward. We look fairly decent at the back. But then when we're having a bit of an off day, yeah, you do worry a little bit. And we tend to have an off day against Brentford on a regular basis at the moment.
I mean, on the pitch for QPR, the players that I automatically look out for is, I'll say, Bright Samuels, and he scored, I think, is it 2 goals? He scored at least 1 goal and not 2 goals the other day against Rotherham as well. And he's a player that, if you look around, Brentford fans are always going, we should look out for him. I know that there was a rumour that he was going to be going abroad. I think it was to one of the Belgian clubs last summer. But that didn't really happen. And a few Bees fans are saying, listen, we wouldn't mind plucking him, if we could do, from QPR, because we're still looking for a wide option. There's a wide option that we're still missing a little bit at Brentford, and some people think that Bright Samuels might be able to bring that to the Bees as well. But also looking at QPR, I've seen that Lyndon Dykes has scored 4 goals, and he seems to be carving out better chances than Ilias Chair. He seems to be carving out better chances than Ilias Chair, who's also scored 4 goals. I mean, who's doing it for you, Gobi?
Lyndon Dykes has got the 4 goals, but all his goals have come from the spot. Now, the thing is, he's not really had too many chances sort of in anger in front of goal. But that's not to say he's not playing well. He holds it up really well. You know, he's physical. He looks like a decent striker. He's just not had those open play opportunities to really capitalise on as yet. And I don't know if that's the style of football we're playing that's just not quite clicked for him, or that's just a problem in general in terms of creating chances for him. Chair has come alive more in the last few games, hence why he's getting his goals, and he's had a couple of nice finishes in those as well. So I don't think either or. I mean, there's not necessarily one standout player between those two, or any other signings. Even Bright, Bright say Samuel. I mean, he's been brilliant for us like over last season. This season it hasn't quite started so well. I don't know if the transfer speculation unsettled him a little bit, and he wasn't sure where his future was going to lie, and then obviously fans are kind of a bit impatient because they're not sure whether he's committed to the club or not. But the last couple of performances, he's definitely started to look more like his old self, and especially against Rotherham last night. I mean, he was causing them, especially in the first half, he was causing them all sorts of problems. There's a lot of potential. I think, in a nutshell, there's a lot of potential in the side. It's like I say, they're still new, they're still working each other out. But hopefully, once it clicks, there'll be not just Bright Say Samuel in the side that's a problem for teams. There'll be a whole host of players that we can look out for. Like you say, Dykes. He's getting rave reviews from in the Scottish team. So hopefully he can come alive, and start scoring from open play as well. Ilias Chair can hopefully start filling the boots of Eze, and then some of the other signings, we've got, hopefully will come good as well. So at the moment I don't think there's one standout player as such, but they are working well as a unit. But we just need to step up just a little bit more to really sort of threaten teams on a regular basis.
So listen, I mean, just flipping it back off the pitch a little bit as well, just talking about, the two clubs and, how our community works with our clubs. I mean, at Brentford at the moment now, we've got a Bees fan, Jamie Powell, who we're trying to raise money for. Over £300,000 has been raised for him. Over last week, actually, £20,000 went from the club via the iFollow donation. But also, I noticed for yourself as well, QPR. I mean, you're properly was involved in the community at QPR as well, and they do some great work. They've got the Kai and Prince Foundation, who's a kid who was fatally stabbed in 2006 with a knife. And they've got this foundation which basically is committed to combating knife crime and forms of youth violence as well. And also QPR did a lot of work with Grenfell as well. And I know that you were involved in their community scheme there a lot, weren't you, Gobi?
Yeah, I mean, kind of through my badminton and just in their supporters club as well, as a sports committee. I've had a bit of dealings with the foundation, and they've been brilliant. I mean, they do so much within the community. It's not just on the field stuff, that we're known for, in terms of QPR as a football club. The stuff we're doing in the community really is worthwhile. And two of the projects you mentioned there, the Grenfell and for the Kai and Prince Foundation. I mean, those sort of things are really, really sort of important. Especially we're not a big club. We're not a big club, and we need to show that we are not just a club that just takes money from people and puts on football. We're part of a community. We are, part of people's lives. And for some people, football is a major part of their life. But actually, QPR go beyond just the football stuff. They're helping people get on their feet. They're helping youth. The youth of today trying to develop, and those who've had troubled sort of lives, they're trying to build them and make them into something. And that's not just about football. That's just about improving life. And let's face it, we love football. Love football, but in some ways there are more important things than football. And QPR are showing that through the power of football, which is quite clever. I can't put into words how pleased I am to be part of that, part of QPR and, with the work they do. It's amazing.
So let's bring it back to Friday's match. So tell me something, Gobi, what are you expecting? Because like I said to you, you're a bit nervous going into this game, but to be fair, looking at you, you do score, okay with scoring goals. You're probably just slightly below where they expect you to be and the expected goals as well. And again, you do let in goals. You're probably just slightly above or slightly below where they expect you to be. Actually, you probably should have just let in a few more goals as well. Where do you see it coming with Brentford, who at the moment now are kind of still trying to move into second gear, really?
I mean, like I say, the form book goes out the window when we play Brentford. We get to Griffin Park and then it just goes all pear-shaped for some reason. I'm hoping that doesn't happen on Friday, but looking at it as the two teams, Brentford are always going to be a threat. You lose your star players from last season, and then you get Tony who's banging them in. So all of a sudden, my eyes are thinking, well, is he going to score, or how many is he going to score on Friday? So that's a big worry for me. But they're not detracting from what we've got to offer. Like I say, we've got a change in personnel compared to last season. The players we've got in, if they click and they do all right on Friday, we could cause Brentford some problems. And it's just the unknown. We haven't found that consistency yet, and that's the problem. Because if we were consistently playing well and looking like a threat every single game, I'd fancy us to do all right. But at the moment, we're playing a couple of games that are really decent, and then we get a game where we're a bit sort of slack, and we're prone to making a lot of errors, and then we get turned over. So it's kind of known which Rangers side's going to turn up. But then at the same time, we've not had a settled team as yet. We've not had the same lineup really for more than 2 or 3 games. I think really, that's one of the problems as well, because it's still finding out who's going to be the form players in the team. And at the moment, because everybody's kind of performing well, but there's not necessarily an outstanding player that say, right, that is the first name on the team sheet. Whereas last season we would have said, right, Eze would be the first player on the team sheet. We haven't quite got that yet this season, so there's a few players that are kind of chopped and changed, depending on the fixtures. So I couldn't even tell you what sort of lineup we're going to have on Friday. I couldn't reel off the starting 11 straight away, because there's probably 3 or 4 that will probably change, and depending on what the changes are, will kind of determine how we play. So it's all a bit up in the air, even for us, to be honest.
So even Osei Samuel is not really a starter.
He started on against Rotherham last night, and I think he started on Saturday as well against Watford. But some of the games prior to that, he hasn't started. Now, I don't know how much of that is down to the whole transfer speculation and commitment to the club, but he hasn't been a regular starter until the last few games. Likewise, Lyndon Dykes, because he's been on international duty, he hasn't started. He didn't start against Watford. I think Chair's probably our most regular starter at the moment. And even Albert Adoma, we've got Albert Adoma in, but he started a few games, but now he's been on the bench a few times. So we haven't got necessarily a fixed sort of attacking lineup that I can say, yeah, he's definitely starting. Lyndon Dykes is definitely starting, or Mac Bond is definitely starting. We haven't got a guaranteed sort of starter, as it were. But I think that's just partly because of players trying to get settled, and players going on international duty, and players trying to find form. It's all a bit of a not mismatch. It's just not a consistent lineup at the moment.
Same problems with QPR as with Brentford and all the other teams. With this fixture congestion means there's a lot of rotation, there's a lot of injuries, there's a lot of question marks, and that's probably why a lot of the results are going out the place. So Gobi, I'm going to ask you, mate, though, give us a score prediction.
I would take a 1-1 draw.
So Gobi's on the 1-1 draw, hoping that the scores will be even Stevens as we play on Friday night. Fingers crossed Bees need to get a result, because we need to start climbing up that table, because, like I said to you, we've had a few little signs out there and we look pretty good against Barnsley the other day, but we need to keep the momentum going. But listen, Gobi, it's been really good chatting to you. Fingers crossed it'll be a good game on Friday night. Fingers crossed from our perspective, the result goes our way. But listen, whatever way, let's enjoy yourselves, mate, and let's go into December with our fingers crossed as well. That talking about that as well, because there is a chance that we might actually see some live football soon as well, isn't there?
Let's hope there's some sort of live football. I mean, I can't wait if that is the case. I've missed going into games, and it just it won't be the same amount of crowd and all the rest of it. But just to be able to watch some live football and add a little bit of atmosphere into the stadium, I'm sure whichever 2,000 or 4,000 are in the stadium, I'm sure they'll give it their all and make a lot of noise just to try and make up for the missing thousands there are. But yeah, let's hope for football in general. Let's hope there's fans back in, because with some of the other craziness we're seeing, with people allowed to do this, that, and the other, it's just, for me, it's mad that we can't go and watch football outdoors, socially distanced, and why we've not been able to do it already is beyond me. But let's hope it happens soon.
Let's hope it happens soon. So Gobi, I'll chat to you, no doubt, on Friday night after the game.
So it should be good.
So yes, Gobi Ranganathan. Good bloke, Gobi, as well. Like I said to you, England Paralympian. He plays badminton for England, goes all around the world, but he watches QPR loads, and he is very nervous about the game. And it's funny that, because like I said to you, a lot of Bees fans were nervous going into this QPR game. We normally do them over, but this time we're thinking, we're not quite sure about that. And I think Barnsley's probably kind of stopped a lot of those nerves jangling, but still it's not a given. And let's just have a look at our result going into this QPR game, and definitely check out Ian Westbrook's match review as well. He always does a preview of the match, really good, on Beesotted.com, so check that out on Beesotted.com. As you can do, as they say, Brentford have lost just one of their 9 last meetings with QPR in all competitions, winning 7 times in each of the winning 7 times, and in the last 3 as well. So QPR have conceded 2+ goals in each of their last 9 matches against Brentford in all competitions. The last side to do that in 10 straight games against the R's were Coventry between 51 and 56. QPR have lost 18 of their last 19 matches played on a Friday in all competitions, winning only versus Aston Villa in this run in October 2018. 1-0 they won that. During this run, they've lost to Brentford on 2 occasions on a Friday in October 2015 and October 2016. Remember them very well. Brentford have lost each of their last 10 London derby matches in league competition on home soil, with 4 of those victories coming against QPR. And Brentford striker Ivan Toney has been directly involved in 16 goals in his last 11 home league matches across spells with Peterborough and Brentford. That's 14 goals and 2 assists. So that sounds like a 1-0 win to QPR then, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. You have to kind of be a little bit wary, don't you? But we are due to slip up in one of these matches. We had the double in the West London games last year, and QPR haven't been awful. They scored 3 goals last night. I know they conceded a couple. You just got to be a little bit more hopeful that now we can got back to winning ways, we can sort of push on from there. We won't need winding up. We won't need any incentives. Our players are more than aware of what the game means to everyone on and off the pitch, and I think we're going to push on and raise our game. So yeah, I mean the sequence will come to an end at some stage. We're not always going to beat them, but I'm not sure it's going to end this Friday night.
As the great Mr. Gillam says, the visitors will have to beat us 9-0 on Friday night to go above us in the table. So, and that ain't going to happen. I think as well, Warburton always falls into the trap as he allows us to play football. And any team that does that is likely to get a tonking from us. Or no, not a tonking, sorry, but we're likely to win. I'm quite happy with I'm quite happy that we've come off the Barnsley game. Ivan Toney's got his scoring boots back on. I think we've got players who really understand now the importance of this fixture. So not only do you have Peter Gillam going on, I think you'll have somebody like Pontus as well in the dressing room, reminding the crowd that this could be the last game that the team play without a crowd. But they'll want to put on a performance for the TV too. So I'm quietly confident. I don't see QPR's winless run against us coming to an end on Friday night. I pray.
The QPR, they're good at attacking down the wings and created chances through individual skill. There's got some good skillful players as well. Weaknesses of avoiding offside, defending against attacks down the wings, protecting the leads, so even if they go ahead they just can't keep it as well. Stopping opponents from creating chances, defending counter-attacks. What's interesting as well, if you look at the statistical side slightly, they're slightly ahead of the game. So the expected goals for is 17. They've actually scored 15. So they've actually scored less than maybe they should have done as well. And against as well, they've actually let in probably slightly less than they should have done. So hopefully, if we create the chances that we can do, we actually put them away. Actually, we should actually kind of do all right against QPR. They're kind of slightly underperforming it in both ways. Again, Gobi talked about the players, he talked about, Bright Samuel, who, we're all thinking, oh my God, dangerous player, but he's like going, sort of kind of, he's doing all right. Some games he's all right, sometimes he's not, he's in and he's out, Talked about Ilias Chair, who's kind of sort of playing fairly regularly and, he's scoring the goals, but he's just saying that none of them have got the consistency and they don't even know what their first 11 team is going to be. So in a way, that's kind of a good thing for us because we've kind of gone through that to a certain extent, but I think we kind of know what our first 11 team is now, and if our first 11 team is on fire, we kind of know what we're going to get out of it. So I think that Barnsley game was a big one for us for confidence and in knowing how we're going to tackle QPR, and I don't think they're going to be too happy coming down to new Griffin Park after that game on Tuesday night.
And I think, a lot of people have said, without a crowd there's something lacking. It's very difficult for the players to raise themselves to kind of get that needle, to get that like tingle of adrenaline, either from a roar or a crowd or chanting or whatever. Having a grudge match that might be able to give us the opportunity to raise our game. And the players in that team, the Sergio Canoses, the players that have been there for several seasons, they'll be able to instill the importance of the game, and as you said, Gillam will be in there giving them sort of a proper blast before the game. So I'm confident, and I'm a little bit more confident now we beat Barnsley.
Talk about confidence and give us a score prediction, Laney.
2-1 Brentford.
The Liberal Nick.
1-0 Brentford.
And the Billy the B Grant. I'm going to go 2-0 to Brentford. So, all confidence is back. QPR are coming down. Fingers crossed we can do what we're going to do. Interesting week. We're coming out of lockdown in a week's time, and we're going to be in December, and I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to do it very safely, but I'm really looking forward to seeing my friends back in the pubs and watching the game in the pubs, and fingers crossed maybe get to a match if we come out the ballot right and they use the tap system and whatever they may do. But we'll talk about that later. Like I said, it's Beesotted, Pride of West London podcast. I want to say to you, just remind you quickly, Jamie Powell, they've got an auction now. They've got all sorts of things that they're auctioning out. So check out the Beesotted Twitter, check out Beesotted Facebook, check out the Brentford site. Just Google Jamie Powell auction Brentford fan, and they've got all sorts of stuff they're auctioning off there. So definitely they're edging towards the £350,000 that they need. So thank you for everybody out there for donating and doing what you have to do. Like I said to you, Beesotted, other than that, like I said to you, thank you for supporting us as well. Beesotted.com/beer, and you can buy us a beer if you like us, if you like what we're doing, and we'll just keep coming week on week. But like I said to you, my name is Billy Grant. I'm here with Laney Man in the house there as well. I'm there with the Liberal Nick, the fake Liberal. He's not the real Liberal. We got the real Liberal on last week.
The one and only. The one and only.
And we are looking forward to QPR. We're looking forward to QPR coming down to Griffin Park, new Griffin Park on Friday night, as we say,
come on,
you bees.
You bees. You bees.
Let's beat those R's, come on. They're scared of us, come on, you bees.